Parshas Vayakhel on page 516. Usually we read this parsha together with another parsha, Parshas Perkudei, simply because of how the year falls. Have you ever wondered why some years we read two parshas in 1 week and sometimes only one? It has to do with how the year falls. Because, for instance, if a holiday falls so that the first or second day, it could be the 7th or 8th day, but it usually would be both of them, falls on a Saturday, on a Shabbos, so then we don't usually read the regular portion that you would normally read. In other words, if this week we're reading Vayakhel, but today was the first day of Pesach, we wouldn't read Vayakhel. We would read the special reading for Pesach. But we have to read Vayakhel sometime. You have to read the whole Torah. So when that happens, they put certain parshas together into one, so that you read two in 1 week. On weeks where that doesn't happen as often, on years that doesn't happen, where you don't have the holidays falling on weekends as much, so then you don't have to do that. Plus, you have the thing called the leap year. Now, in the civil calendar, that's once every 4 years, I think, you have an extra day. In our calendar, it's even less than that. It's like twice every 7 years, you have an extra month. So this year we have that extra month. When you have that extra month, you have 3 or 4 extra Saturdays, Shabbos, right? So then you would separate the parshas, so you'd write each one separately because you've got more weeks to do it, because the year is taking longer. So that's why. So this year we are in that year of leap year. That's why. Otherwise, we would have celebrated Purim last week, because it would have been the second week of the month of Adar. But this year we have 2 Adars, Adar 1 and 2, and Purim is held in Adar 2. So that means it's going to happen in about 2.5 weeks. That's why you're starting to see publicity about it. People are sending out things. We started yesterday sending out items about it, because it's coming up in about 2.5 weeks. Right, so that's why we do that. So this week we begin only with the first of the 2, which means that, by the way, that one of the reasons they tied them together is this similarity of the parshas and what it's discussing. Another reason is because the parshas not only are similar, but they're short. Some parshas are very long, but some are very short. So when you have enough weeks where you separate them to the normal one, it's going to be very quick, because they don't take as long, and this is one of those. So this is Vayakhel, and it begins, Vayakhel Moshe gathered together Kol Hadas B'nai Yisrael, all of the Jews, V'yomer Lehem, and he said to them, Eila Devarim Asher Tziva Hashem Lasos Asam. This is what God commands you to do. Sheishes Yamim Tasem Melacha V'yom Hashvi Elechem Kadosh. So he says, what does God want from you? 6 days you should do your work. On the 7th day, on 6 days work should be done. Tasem Melacha, you should do work. And on the 7th day should be holy. In another place it tells us on 6 days you should do your work, and the 7th day is holy. Here it just says on 6 days there should be work done. Right? There's a difference, right? In one place it says malachtecha, your work, and one place it says malacha, work. So 6 days you should do your work, and another place it says 6 days you should work. So what's the difference? Why does the Torah change it? Like if you look in other places where it talks about Shabbos, it says your work, and that's the more common way. Here it says work. 6 days you should work, not your work, but work. So from here, some of the commentaries tell us this is teaching us a lesson that when it comes to work, we have to understand the Jewish perspective on it. Work is a necessity, right? It's part of the curse of humankind that you have to work in order to make a living. If you don't, you're not going to be able to eat. You're not going to be able to do mitzvahs. You have to work in order to have money. Right? That's part of life. Right? That's what work is. But we confuse ourselves very often with work, and we turn our lives into work rather than working for a purpose. And we end up working so much that in order to acquire money, that we end up not having a life outside of work. For instance, it's that when Adam and Eve, right, they did what they did in the Garden of Eden. So it says that they were each cursed. So Eve was cursed that she should have pain in childbirth. That's one of the things.
All the women they often.
Right, and the men were cursed that they should make a living by the sweat of their brow. And it's hard work. So you'll notice an interesting thing, that civilization has done everything it could to minimize the amount of pain that a woman has during childbirth. right? That when I was a baby, right, they used to give women general anesthetic. They didn't even know they were having a baby. They would knock them out. They'd wake up and have a baby. Later, right, they started doing other types of medical procedures in order to lessen the pain. And even if a woman says she wants it totally natural, she learns ways to lessen her own pain. So it's logical. Here, this is a curse, and you want to lessen the curse. So therefore, we do whatever we can to make it less painful. But then you have the curse on the men. And the curse on the male is that he has to work for a living by the sweat of his brow. So you'd think we would come up with ways that you have to work less. But we don't. We do just the opposite. If this is a curse, we should try to find ways that we should work as little as possible to acquire the money we need to live. But instead, we work as much as we can to acquire as much money as we can so that we can do what we want, not just so we can live. And there we see, from understanding how the curse is for the women, that we have the wrong look. We're not looking correctly at the idea of work. We're seeing work as an end. It's not. It's a means. It's a means to living a life of Torah. It's not the end. It's not the purpose of life. Like that's the Protestant work ethic is that you work, right, and work itself is good for you, right? Our idea is that work is a vehicle to live your life, but nevertheless we overdo it. And we spend our whole days working, and all we do is work, and we acquire more and more money in order so we work and we work more. It becomes a goal. The Torah is telling us here by saying in one place, on 6 days you should do your work, and then the next place it says on 6 days you should work, is telling you it makes no difference what your work is. God said we should minimize work. You go and do your job. You have to work, go to work, right? But you don't have to make it your life. It's not always your work. Sometimes it's just work. God says He wants you to work. He wants you. It's part of the curse of life, so we have to do it. But we should do whatever we can to minimize it, and that's why it changes from saying your work to just work, to tell you that you can go to work 24 hours a day, and you'll bring in more money. But that's not the idea. The idea is you work the amount that you need to work in order to have the life that you're supposed to have. And that's why it says that. The next thing is that it's sort of out of place, because what is the purpose of this parsha? The purpose of this parsha and the next parsha is that we've had a few weeks where they talked about everything you needed to do to build the portable temple in the desert, the Mishkan. You had to shear goats, and you had to dye wool, and you had to fashion wood, and you had to fashion metal, and you had to make the aron, and you had to make the menorah, and all of these things you had to do, right? So finally, they're finishing it. So now Moshe is coming to them, telling them there are certain things you still have to donate for it, and then in next week's parsha they'll already come to the conclusion and they'll finish it. It'll be done. So here he comes to tell them, all right, we talked abstract. 3 weeks ago we talked about what you need to build the temple itself. Now the next week we talked about what you need to make the special clothes for the Kohen, and then we talked about how we need to provide all of the vessels and the objects within the temple that are consumed in order to use the temple. Right? Now it's finished. Now you got to do it. So this week it says, okay, now you got to pay for it. Right? And that's what it's about to tell you, that Moshe is going to tell them what they have to give. But right in the middle, before he tells them what they have to give, he starts off by talking about Shabbos, which at the end of last week's parsha they talked about Shabbos. What's the purpose of telling us about Shabbos now? Right now he's about to tell us you got to pay the bill. Okay? This is how you make the temple. Now let's do it. I need you to bring gold, and you to bring this, and you to bring that, and everyone's got to do it. Right? So what is he talking about Shabbos in the middle for? Like it's a commercial in the middle of a discussion. Like, you have the president giving the State of the Union address. In the middle they have a commercial for coffee. Like this could be the most important talk in the history of the world, and they're going to have an advertisement. Here we got Moshe in the Torah, eternal. These words are going to be read by people throughout history. And in the middle of this discussion, it gives you a commercial about Shabbos. So the idea is telling us the following, that even though we're talking about physical objects after this, we're talking about how much money you give, how much gold you'll give, how much wool you'll give, how much linen you'll give, out of your pocket, right? These people don't have foundations. This is real money. It really costs them. You have to remember that that as much as the money seems to be mundane, right? And money is mundane. It's not like, how people say, how can, when you go for an aliyah, at the end of the aliyah, the guy will give you a card, the man a card, and the idea is to say, if you'd like, to make a donation because you got an aliyah, here's your opportunity. And they give them a card where you put a paperclip on the amount of money, and then after Shabbos they write it down, right? So people sometimes get all upset. They say, how can you ask for money on Shabbos? It's terrible. Shabbos is a holy day and you're asking for money. So the fact is that that's a Christian idea, that money is physical and money is bad, and spirituality is this idea of thinking about God and so forth. No, our idea of spirituality is that you have to make sure, right, with things that are spiritual, that things that are physical are also spiritual. The giving of money for a charitable cause is as spiritual as keeping Shabbos. Right? The fasting on Yom Kippur is just as spiritual as giving money for a poor person to have lunch. It's the same idea. They're all spiritual acts. In the outside world, the other religions see that intimacy is physical, money is physical, right? All of these things are physical, and their purpose of the physical world is to take you away from the spiritual world. And we say it's not the case. Money is a vehicle. Intimacy is a vehicle. These are all vehicles in order to accomplish a goal. Money is there to help us, make us possible for us to give tzedakah, to have people in our house on Shabbos, to buy a lulav, right? All of the things that you need to have. That's what money is. Money is not evil. Money is not bad. The person using it could be, but not the money. And that's why before Moshe asks them for money, he gives them the laws of Shabbos again, to remind them that just as spiritual as it is to give money, it's just like the same as spiritual as it is to keep Shabbos. Don't think that there's a difference, right? And that's why he does that. If you look in verse 10, here it says, V'chol chacham leiv. It starts, every wise-hearted person. Right? What does that mean? If I was asking you for money, for a donation, right, towards the temple, towards our synagogue, towards whatever that we're doing here, and I was making an appeal, I'd say anyone whose heart moves them, anybody who's generous of spirit, anybody who really believes in our cause, you should be the ones giving, right? So I'll come and I'll appeal to you. You don't come to my PARSHA class every Wednesday, right? Don't you think it's worth paying something, right? That's right. Why? Because you feel it, right? And I'm not soliciting you. I'm giving you an example. Mm-hmm. So it's the same idea. So Moshe is going to them and asking them for money for the temple. But he says, all of you wise people, what does wise have to do with it? You're kind-hearted, you're generous, you care, you benefit. Okay, those are all good reasons to give money. But because you're smart, that's why you're going to give money. Why is Moshe using that word? Okay, smart people might give money, but it doesn't mean that because you're smart you give money. What is he getting at by doing that? Then, so we understand that you're smart means that you're a person who has vision. You can see the future, and you see that your money that you have has a purpose. The purpose of money is to use it, and to do good things with it. That's the purpose of money. It could be that the way you use it is save for your old age, but that's a good use for money. It could be that you're doing it because you want to help the poor, because you want to build a synagogue, you want to make sure there's a mikveh in the city. So that's what you give your money for. A wise-hearted person knows this. It says, Chacham Leiv, a person with a wise heart, Ilakach mitzvahs, he takes mitzvahs. Now, the other person takes diamonds. Right? That person takes money. He wants money so that he can have a lavish life. A smart person takes mitzvahs. His mitzvahs give you eternity. They're much better than a nice life. So here he's telling you, a person who's smart, who wants to do mitzvahs, who wants to live their life the right way, they're going to contribute to this. Right? That's why I use that expression. It's got nothing to do. See, charity in the secular world is something that you do because you feel bad for the person who needs it. I go on the street and I see a little child, and the child asks me for money. He has no money for food. So I go and I give him money for food, right? Why? Because I feel bad for the kid. A little kid that doesn't have money for food, right? I got food I throw away. I'm going to give him money. But that's not Jewish charity. That's non-Jewish charity. The word charity itself, right? Comes from a Greek word that means that you feel pity for the other person. I'm not supposed to feel pity for a poor person. I'm supposed to fix the problem, right? It's not because, what if the person came and it was a kid who didn't have much money for food, but he stinks. I don't want him near me. He smells bad. So I'm not going to talk to him. So I'm not going to have that feeling. So I won't give him money because I don't feel that. Because giving money in Judaism has nothing to do with how you feel. We're obligated to make the world right. The world is not right when there are people starving. So you have to fix it. Right? That's not because you feel bad for that kid. It's because you feel it's wrong. And therefore you fix it. Certainly you can feel bad. And you can be touched by your emotions and do more. But you can't operate just on your emotions. Because if you operate just on your emotions, in the end, you will come into a case where you won't feel. And then that person won't get. And that's not correct. Right? Like, if you can talk about, people who are racist. So they'll say, a black person comes and they don't have enough money. They're not like me. Let the black people support them. Right? But that's not how we do it. Right? You have to help people. Right? We may have a priority system of who you help first, but you still have to you're still obligated to help everyone. Now we have an obligation to help non-Jews. We just have an obligation to help Jews first. But we have to help others, not just Jews. We care about humans. We even care about animals, so certainly we care about humans. So that's what it's telling us. So it goes on and it tells us now about the construction, how they're putting together the temple. Right, and that's why it says that every wise-hearted person among you shall come and make everything that Hashem has commanded, the tabernacle, the tent, and everything. Now that you've got all the stuff, right, you're going to make it all. And then it says here, and then in verse 20, the entire assembly of Israel left Moshe's presence. They did everything they could, and then every man whose heart inspired him came, and everyone whose spirit motivated him brought the portion of Hashem for the work of the temple and the meeting, for all its labor. So it says, the men brought this, the women brought that, everyone brought different things. They got it together, and they started to build the temple. And then, as they're starting to organize it, Hashem introduces us to a fellow named Bezalel. If you look now on 521, it says Bezalel should carry out. We learned before who Bezalel was. He's on the top of the same page, the first line. Moshe says to the children of Israel, see, Hashem is proclaimed by name, Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehuda. Basically, Bezalel is the general contractor. Bezalel is a fellow who has no training in any of these areas, but God gave him a gift. He understood engineering, art, everything he needed to know. He had a gift that he could innately understand it, so he was put in charge of the Mishnah. So the commentaries all want to know, why him? Why didn't God give the gift to somebody else? So you can see it sort of in his name. It says, Bezalel is the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehuda. First thing is, we don't introduce people that way. We don't say, this is so-and-so, the son of this person, the grandson. We just say who they're the son of. Right? Joe, the son of Jack, right? That's who they are. You don't say the grandson of so-and-so. So the Torah tells us this for a reason. And the main reason, I guess we can figure out by asking you a question. If you know the Torah, you're still going to have to ask the question, who is Uri? Right? You have Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur. I know who Bezalel is. I know who Hur was. Hur was married to Miriam. He was killed by the golden calf. Right? He tried to stop the Jews from worshiping the golden calf, and they killed him. He was Moshe's right-hand man. It was like Moshe had Aaron on one side, he had Hur on the other side, and Hur gets murdered. So this is Hur's grandson. So we know who Hur is, and we know who Bezalel is. He's the great wonder who makes the Mishkan. But who's Uri? We know he's his father, but what did Uri do to deserve a Bezalel? That God should single him out from all the people and make him the main guy. There's got to be something if God's going to do something like that. Certainly the parents have to be deserving that they should have a child like that, right? Blessed with a child. So the answer is that Hur didn't necessarily do anything at all. Uri did not necessarily do anything at all. The purpose of this is to teach us a very important lesson. It tells us who Bezalel is, who his father is, and his grandfather is, out of the normal way of doing things, because they're telling us that God pays his debts. If someone does something for God, be it a simple mitzvah, a hard mitzvah. They give up something. They work hard for something. They even give up their life for something, for God. So that person gets paid back. Sometimes he doesn't get paid back immediately, but he gets paid back. God pays his debts. And here we see that Hur gave up his life for the Jewish people. He tried to stop them from worshiping the calf, and they killed him. And God owes him because of what he did. He gave up his life, right? So what does he do? So sometimes there's a lesson they're telling us. Sometimes God will pay you immediately, but sometimes he won't pay you for a whole generation. God pays Hur back by giving him a grandson called Bezalel. Even if his father Uri doesn't deserve anything special, the grandfather did. You can see this in schools sometimes. Sometimes you'll see a kid in school and he'll excel. And you look at his parents and they're like simple, regular people. And then you look at the grandparents and they were like extraordinary. Right? And you say that you see God's paying back the grandparents, right, for what they did. They tell a story that in the 1960s, early 1960s, the Chazon Ish, who was the great rabbi in Israel at the time, out of context gave a talk about the importance of reaching out to non-observant Jews, which was unheard of then. Like, no one did that. Today you can't imagine it. But then you had two groups. You had the Jews who were religious, Jews who weren't religious. They had nothing in common. There wasn't interactions between them. They didn't necessarily fight. They just had nothing in common. And he comes and says, you have to, be kind and reach out and educate the non-religious people. So that was put in the newspaper in Israel in the early 1960s, and some young teenagers on a kibbutz, a non-religious kibbutz, read it, and they said, okay, we want to find out. And they went in their kibbutz clothes to the yeshiva in Bnei Brak of Panovich, and they showed up at the door and they said, well, the rabbi from here said that you have to teach us, so we've come to learn something. So the boys had no idea what to do. They had never met anyone like this, right? These guys from a kibbutz, they never saw anything like it. So they went to the rabbi. They asked him, like, what do we do? You told these people that we should teach them. Well, here they are. Now what do we do? So he said, just go teach them something. He tells them something they can teach them. Then come back and I'll explain to you what happened. So they go and they teach them, and they start building a relationship with these people. And the time's over for that day. They leave and they go to see the rabbi. They go to the rabbi and say, what's the deal? He says, when I was a child growing up in Europe, Judaism, it was very hard for people to be Jewish. This is way before the war. People were starving to death. The Jews didn't have money for food. They literally starved for death. And when they were starving, a lot of Jews left Judaism because they said, if this is what God is expecting of the Jews, I'm not doing this. I'm going to become a communist. Communism saves people. Communism feeds people. I'm going to become I'll become a socialist. I'll become whatever it is, right, in order that I should be good for people, because Jews want to do good. They saw, but Judaism's not doing it. We've got to find a different way. So they started leaving Judaism. So you had these religious, parents, and their kids, one after another, were all leaving Judaism because they didn't want to live like that. Understandable, but sad. So he says that when I was a kid, that late at night, the older women would come to the shul, and they'd open up the Aron, right, where they keep the Torah, and they'd cry and say Tehillim, saying, God, why are you sending away my children and my grandchildren after all I went through for you, and this is what you do. Right? So he looks at the guys and he says, do you think that the tears of a Jewish woman go unanswered? God doesn't care. He just lets them do it and forgets it. He said those guys there, their great-grandfather were one of those people. He doesn't mean that he knew that. He's saying their great-grandmother sat in a shul and cried her eyes out because her kids were running away from Judaism and they'd end up assimilating. And 3 generations later, they're on a kibbutz in Israel, totally irreligious. No, they don't know what Yom Kippur is. They have a dance on Yom Kippur. They have no idea. They don't know what keeping kosher is. Nothing. They suddenly come to a synagogue, come to a yeshiva to learn Torah out of the blue because I put an article in the newspaper. Well, you can see this is the hand of God. God's paying back those bubbies. He's saying, I don't ignore the tears of a Jewish woman. She cries that she lost her children. I might not bring back her son, but I'll bring back her great-grandchildren. And then they did. right? That's what he's talking about here. When it says it's Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, it doesn't usually tell you the grandfather, but the Torah is telling you God wants to pay back that grandfather. So he's teaching us a lesson that God pays his debts, doesn't always pay them immediately. It might not be that tomorrow God will make things better for you because of what you did, but he will make it better, right? And there's a reason why it's not tomorrow, but he does it. That's what that says. Right? The next thing is it says that this Bezalel here, right, he says that God fills him with the wisdom of God, and he has the ability to do things. And it tells us that he was a great leader. That's what Bezalel was. Now, we don't understand why they say he's a great leader, because he was a great engineer, and he was a great architect, and he was a great artisan. He knew how to take wool and make it into clothes, and he knew how to make walls, and he knew how to mold gold into a menorah. But why was he say he's a good leader? So the Torah tells us here, where it says that in the middle of this paragraph on 34, it says he gave him the ability to teach, him and Olihav, son of Avismach, of the tribe of Dan. Who was Olihav? So Olihav was his partner. Bezalel, God gave Bezalel the ability to do anything. He could do anything. And Bezalel came and said, okay, I want a partner. That's what I want. Yeah, I can do anything. I want a partner from a different tribe. But why? Bezalel came from the tribe of Yehuda. This person comes from the tribe of Dan. Yehuda was the kings. They were the royalty. Dan was among the lowest level of all of the tribes. They were not from the greatest tribe. Why does he do that? Because he was a great leader. He understood that if I bring in people to work with me who are regular people, right, I'm showing the dignity to the regular person, that they are as important as I am, then everybody in the Jewish world will see that I did that. And that's so that they should see that I'm special. They should see all Jews are special. That I, who had the ability to do this whole thing by myself, I took in someone to be my full partner, because I want everyone to know that every Jew has the opportunity to be something. It's not just the special ones. Everyone does. And that's called being a good leader. A good leader makes his followers feel significant, that it's important that you do your job. Your job might be cleaning up the mess at the table after the soldiers eat. That's your job, right? How are you helping the war? You're cleaning the table after the soldiers eat. How does that help the war? You're just as important as the soldier. You're just as important as the sniper. You're just as important as the general. Your job is important. If you didn't do your job, we wouldn't be able to do our job. So that's what he was saying here, and that's why he was called the great leader, the wise-hearted leader. And then the next few pages goes on where he tells them, where you can see that they're actually doing all of the stuff they're supposed to. He does this, he does that, puts all of the things together. It goes through the menorah, right? It calls about the making the Aron, right? Where we kept the Torah, about making the cherubim, those two baby-like entities that we talked about that are on top of the Aron, right? The interesting thing about these cherubim, it's on 525. We've talked about them before. They're these gold objects. They look like human babies with wings. Mm-hmm. They're put on top of the holy Aron, the holy ark. And it says that there were two of them, and when they would face each other, it was a message from God that God and the Jewish people were close, that God was happy with us and we were doing our job. Sometimes they would face the opposite way, and that meant that we were in trouble. They were not looking at each other. What it really says, that Thomas seems to say, is that they weren't as much babies as they were like a couple, a man and a woman. And they looked like babies from the description, but they were like a man and a woman. And so when God felt that there was a closeness between him and the Jewish people, it wasn't that they faced each other, they would embrace like a couple in relations. That's what it looked like, that they would be together like that. So that when you looked at it, you saw these two like they were in relations, as if God and the Jewish people were one. Just like when a man and woman have relations, they're like one person. Mm-hmm. So too God and the Jewish people are like one person. That's what the message he's saying. It says when Titus came to destroy the temple, the second temple, he went into the Holy Ark, the Holy of Holies, and he saw that these two objects were in an together intimately, which you'd think they wouldn't be, because the temple's being destroyed because the Jews did wrong. God would have them facing the opposite way. But because God loves us, he took out his anger on the sticks and stones of the temple, not on us. Right? He didn't kill all the Jews. He destroyed the temple, his own house, right? Because of what we did. So he showed his love to us that they were still together. It says when Titus went in and he looked at it and he saw this here in the holiest place of Jews, you see a couple. It looks like a couple having relations in the holiest place in the temple, right? You say that's that's cuckoo, right? Here you have the holiest place in Jewish life, and you see it's almost like you see pornography, right? He said, "Do you see the Jews are really like? This is what the Jews really are like. This is what they do. They pray to this stuff. They're dirty." Right? So what it is Titus didn't understand. Sex is not dirty, right? It's not. It's dirty if all I care about is me. I care about how I feel. But if I'm having relations with someone that I care about, I'm giving them pleasure. That's what my intent is. Even if I get pleasure, I'm giving them pleasure. That's why I'm doing this, to be close to them. Right? That's the message that we see when we have relations. When we have relations, even in our own life with our spouse, we are doing this to be close to them, to make them feel good in a way that nobody else can do. Something extraordinarily unique and special. Right? That's how we see intimacy in Judaism. We don't see intimacy as pornography, as ugly, as I don't care about you, I only care about how I feel. That's not intimacy in Judaism. Intimacy in Judaism is an ultimate act of giving. And therefore, when God and the Jewish people are united, that's a good thing. And therefore, that's the symbol that we see. Titus says that, he says, look at this ugly thing. I mean, sex is we enjoy it, but it's not something that we would say is holy. You wouldn't put it in a church, right? You wouldn't put it in our pagan temple. But nevertheless, the idea is they have the wrong idea. Our concept of what it is a much higher level. It's an ultimate act of giving, and that's why it was done that way.
Can I ask you, last week when you said that Hashem wanted to destroy all the Jewish people within, the calf, did the Jews know that he wanted to destroy them? Did Moses tell them that Hashem?
Well, it was in the Torah.
That he actually said that he wanted to.
Yeah, they may not have known it at the moment, but they knew it. And at the moment, they probably didn't know it. All right. Then it goes on and talks about some of the different objects that they had and they made. It talks about the menorah and so forth, and how they put, what they did to put everything together. It discusses one of the things it talks about is called the vavin. The vavin, it comes from the letter vav. The letter vav is the sixth letter of the alphabet, right? The letter and the vavin were hooks. They were hooks that fastened together two things, and you would think that they're very insignificant. It's like, I'm going to build a house, and I'm going to spend 20 minutes talking about the nails you're going to put into the house. What do I care about the nails? You put together the frame with the nails, and then you take a piece of board and you cover the frame anyways. I don't know. You could have brown nails, blue nails, I don't care. As long as the house stays together, you can use any kind of nail you want. But here, it talks about these things that attach the pieces, like it's a big deal. In fact, they actually had a special fundraising campaign to acquire them, these vavin. Now, as I said, the word for vavin comes from the letter vav. The letter vav in Hebrew means and. So when I say this and this, I would say this and then the letter vav and then that, the next thing. That means and, right? It's a joiner. The letter vav is a joiner. That's why the word vavin is a joiner. It joins together two things, like a nail would. It takes a piece of metal, and it takes a piece of wood, and it joins it together. That's what you do. You take a piece of cloth and you attach it to a piece of wood with a hook. Right? That's what a vavin was. The vavin were. So it's telling you an important thing that most people would say the vavin were insignificant. Right? Who cares what kind of nail you use in my house? What kind of screw you put in my house? I don't care. Tell me what kind of paint you're going to use. That I want to know. I'll see the paint. I'm not going to see the nail. But the Torah is telling us that the idea of an object that attaches things, that brings things together, is a very important object that we need to know about, because because everything that was in the temple, in this portable temple, is symbolic of life. And one of the most important things that you have in the temple are these vovin. They don't have a role on their own. If you had a room full of these hooks, they do you no good. But if you have a bunch of things that need to be attached, one hook can put them together, can do it. A hook is the ability for two things to be like one, two people to be like one, symbolically. And therefore, it's telling us an important message, that anything that you use that brings things together is good. Anything that you do to bring people together is good. That's what the message is telling us, and that's why they were so significant, even though they didn't seem to be. Because now when you read this section that goes through the portable temple, a message that you can very easily get is to figure out, what does every aspect of that temple mean in my life? Because the temple, in one sense, was symbolic of the human body, and it was the whole human being. So therefore, everything within the temple symbolizes something in my life. And God is sending us a message of what to do with that part of my life in order to be like the temple. So the vovin is a part of it. They are the attachers. They are the things that say how important, significant, and special it is to attach oneself to other people, to get along, to unify, to have one people, to have one family, one community, one nation. To do that is not easy. But that's why the vovin are so important. That's why he stresses it so much. Now, what happens here is that they finish assembling it, and in next week's parsha they bring it together. And it says that as they were assembling it in this week's parsha, they concluded something, that they can't do it. The Jewish people didn't have the ability to put it together. It's one thing to go and I'll say to you all right, everyone here's got a job. You all have to go out and buy a certain thing in a certain amount, bring it back. You can do that. I can say you need some gold, and you need some wood, and you need some metal, and you need some cloth. All right, everyone goes and gets it, and you bring it together. And now you say, okay, now there's 10 of us. We need to build the house. You have all the supplies. Now just build it. Just put it together. Are you crazy? How am I supposed to build a house? I don't have the strength to pull up a wall, to hold the roof up while you nail it down. How am I supposed to do that? Right? And so the whole entire Jewish nation tried to put this Mishkan together. They couldn't do it. They didn't have the physical ability to do it. Right? So I'll conclude by telling you that, which we'll explain next week, that when they tried to, they failed. So they decided, well, we gotta do it. So they brought it to Moshe. The entire temple, unfinished, they brought to Moshe. As if all of the Jewish nation can't do it, Moshe can do it. Right? It made no sense to say that if 3 million of us together can't put together a house, right? Including Bezalel, who has the wisdom to do it, but we can't physically do it. Physically, it was too hard. So we'll go to Moshe, who all by himself, he'll be able to do it. Right? That doesn't make any sense at all. Right? But that's how the next week's parsha begins, answering that question of why they would do such a thing. Right? Why would they go and take, you get 50 guys schleps one wall, another 50 guys schlep another wall, another 200 people schlep the floor, and this guy carries the menorah, and this one brings the altar, and everyone, but they can't put it together. But Moshe, they think, can do it. Like, does that make sense? 3 million people can't put together a building, but one person can do it all by himself. So that's where we'll start next week with answering that question, so we understand that. Okay?
Thank you.
And I hope you've seen, we have started advertising Purim. An important thing to know, I sent out a flyer on this yesterday. We're going to have a Purim rabbi this year. So anybody, man, woman, or child, who wants to be the Purim rabbi has to make a video of 10 seconds to 60 seconds and send to us as to what you're going to do if you're the Purim rabbi. And then we're going to put those on our website, and everybody will vote. And if you get voted in as a Purim rabbi, then on the Shabbos before Purim, you're going to be the rabbi instead of me. You'll go up and give the speech.